This video was brought to you by Slidebean, a platform for startups and small businesses to create professional investor decks and sales presentations. Get 1 free month by signing up at slidebean.com/YouTube. Balancing burn rate and runway in a startup is probably one of the most critical tasks a CEO must deal with. I have a policy of keeping everybody in the team up to date on how our bank accounts are looking, but day-to-day or even month-to-month decisions on expenses still depend mostly on me. Now, it's no secret that startups operate at a loss for quite some time. How fast you become cash flow positive varies significantly from company to company, with some startups achieving break-even point in the first few months after launching. We did it back in 2018, and others like Twitter are still struggling to do so even after an IPO. Often, they end up featured in company forensics. We have a policy of sharing some of our finances and our lessons as part of our transparency marketing. We started doing this back in 2015, inspired by companies like Buffer and Baremetrics, whose own blog posts and materials were an inspiration to us. So in this video, we are gonna take a trip down memory lane to understand how Slidebean was formed, where the first money came from, and how we spent it. This is the story of our first $250,000. Super early funding. We officially started working in Slidebean around May 2013. Which puts us at around 7 years since we started the company. It's pretty crazy. This is where the first money came into the company. In May 2013, we invested sort of $35K, myself and Carao Ventures, who are like our executive co-founders. And this was sort of like a founding round. It's not even a friends and family round. In November 2013, we got $70,000 from Startup Chile and from a Costa Rica seed capital fund. Both were equity-free government grants. In May 2014, we got $25,000 from Dream Ventures as part of their New York accelerator. And then in September 2014, we raised $100K by 500 startups. Finally, in January 2015, we raised our first actual investor round, $250,000, led by Carao Ventures, Ed Harris Ventures, and Dream Ventures. Now, in 2016, we raised another post-seed round, but that's the story for another day. Months 0 to 6, from mockup to the first beta. We were in Costa Rica for this part. Believe it or not, the first Slidebean MVP took around 2 weeks to make. We built a Squarespace landing page with a quick explainer video and a fake sign-up button, just to measure people's interest. Then, building our first actually usable product did take a few months. There are 3 things that I believe we did right during this period, which were critical to getting us to where we are today. So, here's what we did right. Number 1, assigned salaries early on. From day 1, all 3 co-founders had a designated salary. I believe this is fundamental to a company's success and very often overlooked. I've seen many startups that agree not to have a fixed salary and simply cover living expenses for the founders. And this approach can lead to very awkward discussions where a founder needs to fly to visit their family for Christmas or buy a present for their significant other. And does that qualify as a living expense? Even if it's a small symbolic amount, I think that everybody needs to have some money that they can spend without having to explain themselves to the rest of the company. Number 2, same salary for all founders. Now, for most of the early company track, we agreed that all 3 founders were to be compensated equally. This created a sense of transparency and equal commitment among all the 3 of us. We all should be working as hard as we can, and nobody should make more money for doing so. We also decided that if the company could not afford salaries in a given month, we would delay that payment until we had some money in the bank. Thus, if we had to use our own credit cards or our own savings or borrow money to get through the month, we knew that we'd eventually be paid back. And then our 50-50 focus approach. If we used our initial cash to work on Slidebean 100% of the time, we would have been broke before we could raise any money. So this is why we decided to use part of our time to do some consulting work. During the early stages of Slidebean, we made around $5,000 a month in projects for third parties, including online marketing and some web development. We probably used 40 to 50% of our time in consulting work and used the rest of the time to work on Slidebean. This allowed us to work on the tool without burning through our cash too fast. Eventually, we hired a junior developer that took care of most of that consulting work, while leaving Jose, our CTO's schedule around 90% clear to work on Slidebean. This was a product-intensive period, and this is how the financials looked. Months 6 to 12, from beta to 1.0. This part of the story happens mostly in Chile. So Startup Chile is an early stage accelerator that offers an equity-free grant of around $35,000. It's in Chilean pesos, so it changes. Now, your team is required to move then to Santiago for 6 months for the course of the program. By the time we got accepted, we already had almost finished building our first beta. So we launched that before relocating to South America. Being a government grant, the use of funds was pretty rigorous. Aside from the initial cost of flying to Santiago, our burn rate ended up looking something like this. We decided to keep one staff member, not a co-founder, in Costa Rica to continue working on the ongoing consulting work we had, which was supervised from Chile. It was clear that we wanted to dedicate 99% of our time to Slidebean, but with around $10,000 a month in expenses, we needed to keep some of our consulting work to avoid running out of money too fast. Our time in Startup Chile was critical to start testing our product with real potential users. Our advertising spend went towards signing people up and checking our onboarding process. We signed up around 5,000 users during this period and started testing our business model. Since we hadn't had time to implement a payment gateway, we actually tested our subscription model with a fake paywall. If a user needed a feature we were planning to charge for, they'd get a message asking if they wanted to subscribe for $5 a month. If they clicked proceed, then the feature would be unlocked automatically. Again, there was no paywall behind this, but we would find out about their willingness to convert. And using this approach, we discovered that around 8% of our active users would take the click, which gave us some insights as to how our business model was going to work towards the future. So what we did right during this time, focus on user tests and gathering their feedback. We were able to get cheap signups with Facebook ads, and we monitored their behavior closely. We dedicated 100% of our time to Slidebean, and the fact that we moved to the same apartment was critical for this. And then keeping consulting work back in Costa Rica allowed us to help sustain our operation cost. A separate staff handled that, so the core team would not be distracted from our Slidebean product. Experimenting with the business model early on and getting some very early conversion rate numbers. What we did wrong, we didn't start charging for the platform. I believe that this could have boosted our traction significantly, and I look back at this as one of our biggest mistakes. Implementing our payment system should have been a priority. The feedback we received and prioritized came from users, but not from customers. Again, because we didn't have a billing system. Also, we didn't experiment with different customer acquisition channels. While we spent some money on Facebook ads, a lot of it went to students who we later discovered weren't willing to pay for our services. Our current acquisition cost is very different, and we could have had a head start in optimizing that. Months 12 to 16, our launch and first customers. And most of this happened in New York. So we had planned to become a US company all along. This is why halfway through the Startup Chile program, we started applying to some US accelerators. We were accepted in Dream Adventures in May and then relocated to New York. I have a whole video on startup accelerators. I had been through a startup accelerator on my previous company, and I still felt it was important to do it again, mainly for two reasons. One, so my co-founders could experience this crash course too. Accelerators in the end are very high-speed crash course on how startups work. And two, to have a connection in the US. We are foreign founders, and just landing at JFK with no connections means a slow start. An accelerator would solve that, allowing us to build a network, connect to investors, and press faster. Similar to what we did in Chile, we decided to launch the platform in the first few weeks after the program started. So we were able to get a lot of press attention about our launch, precisely because it was linked to us joining an accelerator in the city. Our financials during this period looked something like this. Now, even though living in New York was significantly more expensive than living in Santiago or in San Jose, we were short on cash and could not afford to adjust our salaries yet. The company did pay for our apartment though. While I had been focusing on the marketing/growth during the previous period in Chile, we wanted to leverage DreamIt's network as much as we could to get in front of investors. So we hired a good friend of mine to manage our press and our marketing efforts during this time so that I could focus on investor meetings and fundraising. And this was a big mistake that could have cost us our company. Fundraising is an exhausting and honestly discouraging process. You pitch your life's project only to get rejected 99% to 100% of the time. It's like high school dating. In our case, we made the terrible mistake of spending 25% of our team's time in trying to raise money, when our company was far from ready to do so. With a recently launched 1.0 version, we were making around $1,000 in monthly recurring revenue. Being these our first $1,000 in revenue, we felt that this was enough proof that our business model made sense, but we were wrong. So here's what we did right. We kept our burn rate low thanks to our Costa Rican operation, which at this point was pretty much self-sufficient. We did leverage Dreamit for press and to get a lot of relevant interest to investors, some of them who ended up investing in the company a few months later. What we did wrong, we spent or wasted too much time trying to raise money when our company was just not ready for it. We spent $3,000 in fundraising trips to Cali and to Philly. We didn't spend enough time, money, or effort trying to reach relevant MRR metrics. And like I said, it almost cost us our company. Months 16 to 20, pivot and growth, finally. Now this part of the story happens in Silicon Valley. And I don't tell the story very often, but when we got accepted into the 500 Startups Accelerator, we had about 2 weeks of runway of money in the bank. I was bringing the ill news to my co-founders when the acceptance email came in. Now, 500 Startups' absolute focus on growth was vital to bring our company to where it is today. During this process, we pivoted our target audience from our initial consumer market focus to a B2B play for small businesses and startups. So pretty much what you see today. This happened thanks to our weekly meetings with the staff and their endless and often brutal push to rethink our business. They turned out to be right. Now, their investment was also the first significant pile of money we had raised. It gave us some peace of mind and some flexibility to start spending more money in discovering our growth channel and measuring our cost of acquisition and LTV. So what we did right, we pivoted our business model into B2B, changed our pricing plan significantly. We actually increased our pricing by 5x. As we moved into these startup major leagues, we disconnected Slidebean completely from our Costa Rican consulting operations. That company became a separate business altogether. We had a deep focus on acquiring customers. So we finally nailed some positive unit economics. That means the cost of acquiring a customer is less than the money that we make from that user. And then we found some good acquisition channels, mainly through Google search ads. We also hired a customer success person who was key to increasing our conversion rates. She also let us discover how much we needed a direct line of live support and live conversations with our customers. We didn't waste a single minute trying to raise money. We had 100% dedication to the product and to growth. So what did we do wrong during this time? Well, after the program ended, we couldn't retain our customer success person, and we were forced to make a new opening. Never underestimate the time needed and the cost of replacing someone, especially at those early stages. We also came into the program at an earlier stage than other companies. This meant that we had to play a bit of catch up during the accelerator to avoid being the less relevant company in demo day. Months 20 to 24, our first investor round, and how to balance growth and spend. One thing was evident when we finished our 500 Startups process. Now we were on our own. Growing our company and pushing the bar every month was entirely up to us. Now, we were able to secure a $250K seed round, and we expanded the company to 6 full-time employees, mostly based in our Costa Rica office. We kept a New York co-working space where I would still spend around 40% of my time, mainly to keep our investor and our contact network active for the upcoming fundraising efforts. This also allowed us to officially remain as a New York startup while keeping our costs down. It's actually cheaper to fly to New York 1 week every month than to actually live there. Now, the challenge for any startup at this point is balancing net burn and growth. There are 2 extremely different approaches that a company can take at this stage. On one side, you have minimum spend and slow growth. So for companies running low on cash reserves and seeking to break even as soon as possible, you have to go with a route that means low to no spending on growth experiments and no new hires. On the other hand, maximum growth, spare no expense approach. This is for companies that assume that they can raise their next round of funding and are pretty sure that they will be able to do so. Here, there's really no focus on reaching a break-even point. On the contrary, the priority is continuing with accelerated growth to engage future investors. If the growth is great, investors will come, which is kind of true. But I believe that neither approach is ideal. On the first hand, investors expect fast and dynamic companies rather than safe strategies. They've already invested and assumed the risk of funding a startup. A company with such slow growth will not give them a substantial return on their investment. On the other hand, focusing exclusively on revenue growth without paying attention to the net burn rate makes the company depend on future rounds of investment, which might or might not come in time. Through 2015 and 2016, we saw a 20% month-over-month revenue growth, and we achieved this by repeating this approach. Step 1, experimenting with a bunch of different acquisition channels, $500 to $1,000 on a test. Number 2, carefully measuring the cost of acquisition and lifetime value of each channel. Number 3, once a channel is confirmed as profitable, that means that lifetime value is bigger than the cost of acquisition, we double the investment in that channel and continue monitoring it to ensure that that 2.5x is maintained. We do that until that channel is depleted, and then start over. We have a full video on that story, so check it out. Now, like I said, we find good and profitable channels that we continue investing in until that channel becomes depleted. And that's where more spending results in unsustainable cost of acquisition cost. These channels are the main drivers of our monthly growth. Now, we actually released our actual financial records for the year 2015. Our goal during this time was keeping our burn rate between $15,000 and $20,000. Now, remember that we had just raised a round. The purpose was investing this cash in growing aggressively. A monthly burn rate of 15K to 20K meant that the money we had just raised would last for around 15 months or so. As our revenue grew from $3,000 to $20,000 a month in the span of these 12 months, we expanded the team, always keeping an eye on the monthly burn and not allowing that to exceed $20,000. By 2016, we reached around $50,000 in MRR, just 1 year later. So raising a new round of funding was honestly one of the easiest parts of running this business. Now, that doesn't mean that the whole company building process gets easier, but having to be so careful about your spend is most certainly very distracting. Anyway, if you feel that your company is ready to raise capital, we can probably help. So grab one of our pitch deck templates or get our team to help you write or design your slides. You can find the different ways in which we can get involved at slidebean.com/pitch deck. If you have any questions about this story or the fundraising process, I'll be holding a live Q&A as soon as this video goes live, so join us at our Discord on slidebean.com/live. If you're not ready to raise money, then you can just subscribe. See you next week.